Hi, I'm Kate Leary with my great uncle Chuck.
What do you want to ask me about today, Kate?
Tell me about your typical day getting ready for school in the 50s.
In the 50s, well, first of all, I had to walk to school. It's just the way things were. They didn't have as much busing as they have today. So I had to get up a little bit earlier than maybe you do. Very few homes had showers back then. We had bathtubs, so we had to take a bath. But like I said, we would walk to school, get to school, and then the day was pretty much the same as what you have right now. You have math class and English class and so on.
How has communication changed from your growing up?
That's probably about the biggest change. I mean, even when getting back to the school thing, you know, the tools you have for school today and didn't exist. I mean, when I went to school, we didn't have calculators, we didn't have computers. All the video movies, things like that you have now that you can use in school, we didn't have any of that. The phone that I had at my house was a party line. In essence, we shared a phone with our neighbor. And that was a big change when we got a private line, that we had our own phone number and we didn't have to share it with anybody. Of course, today you have cell phones and the internet and email and all kinds of different things. So that's a big change from when I was growing up.
How has shopping changed?
Shopping. Well, I suppose the biggest change is that there's a whole lot more stores today than there were when I was growing up. The mall didn't exist. There was a lot of department stores, we called them, and that was one thing. So you'd go to the department store and you'd have a ladies section, a men's section. You'd buy what you needed there. Probably the other thing that's changed is the way you paid for things. Today everything's done by credit cards. Back then we didn't have credit cards. Not until later, not until I was a little bit older. So you wrote a check or you paid cash. Sometimes you put things on layaway. I think they still have layaway today in some places where you just held it till you got enough money to pay for it, and then you went and picked it up. Sometimes you'd pay for it on installment. You just have credit right at the store, not necessarily a credit card. Food we ate, the groceries we got, usually were at a corner store, and we always had a charge account. You'd go in and buy a few things, and the grocer would write down what you owed him. And every now and then, every couple of weeks, my dad would go in and pay the bill at the grocery store, and that's how we shopped back then.
How about kitchen appliances? Are they different?
Kitchen appliances are way different, I can tell you that. Imagine not having a microwave oven today. Everything was so different back then. Coffee pots, you know, you could make a cup of coffee now in 20 seconds. Back then you had to boil the water or use a percolator to make coffee. Things were a lot different. Very rarely did we ever grill out per se. It was always cooked in the stove, on the stove. Things were a lot more formal then. We sat down and had dinner every night at the table, and that doesn't always happen anymore. You know, at a lot of households, everybody's out running around doing different things, involved in more activities. So I guess that's probably the biggest change.
We used a scanner to pay for our lunch. What did you do?
Well, yeah, you get to stick your finger in that thing and pay for your lunch. Well, we actually had to buy lunch tokens, is what they called. And I can remember lunch cost 3 cents. 3 cents, and you'd get a lunch token. And sometimes you'd go and you'd buy $1 worth of tokens, and you'd keep them. And every day you'd turn in a token for lunch. So but you paid cash for it, but it was a lot cheaper back then.
So, Uncle Chuck, what did you do for fun?
Oh, I guess we had to make our own fun. You guys today have video games, and you get home movies and DVDs and CDs and home music. And when I was growing up, we didn't have any of that. What wasn't invented yet. Usually what we did is we got home from school, just like you do, around 2:30 or 3, something like that, and then all the neighborhood kids met at the park. And we played football. Football's in season, baseball during baseball season, basketball and basketball. We made our own fun. We went swimming down at a river that went through town, or there was a public pool we went to. Cost us 10 cents to go to that public pool. And we spent a lot of time in the summer there. Fishing was a big thing. We would go down to the river and fish, and the city would sponsor fishing derbies, and those were big deals, and we had a lot of fun with those. We did have Little League. I know Little League was free for anybody. If you could find a way to get down to the Parks and Recs department, you could just sign up for it, and you get a phone call and said you're on a team, and you play. All volunteer, all sponsored by local vendors. I played for the Morticians, which was all the funeral parlors in town. That was kind of a name we got teased about quite a bit. But we had a lot of fun. But we had to make our own fun. We didn't have all the things that you guys get today. I think maybe I had it better than you have it. Next question.
Tell me about TV back then.
Well, we had actually just black and white TV. It wasn't color TV till I became a teenager. We had 3 stations to choose from, and we actually had to get up out of the chair and go turn a knob to change stations. No controllers or anything like that. There was a few series, but mostly no ESPN, no Nickelodeon, no Disney Channel. Usually a movie of the week. Big shows were like on Sunday night, usually Ed Sullivan, where in 1964, and I saw the Beatles live on Ed Sullivan. That's when they first came. Now you've heard of the Beatles, right? Of course you've heard of the Beatles. They're old, but everybody's heard of them. So we watched a lot of TV in the evenings. I say a lot, maybe 2 hours, because a lot of news and a lot of adult programs that the kids really didn't like much back then. But after school, there was, remember, you've heard of like the Mickey Mouse Club? That was a big one, and there was like a Bandstand, which was kind of like the MTV of the day back then, where they'd play the hit songs of the time, and they'd have people dancing on it. And so it was something that was important in our life, but certainly not like it is today. I think what I like today about it is you could watch just about any sporting event you want on TV. Back then, I lived in a town that showed only American League baseball games, so I knew nothing about National League teams or players, and our local paper didn't cover them, so I didn't know anything about it. You get so much more news and information today on TV than we got back then.
Did you have cable TV?
Didn't have cable TV. Everything was, we called them rabbit ears or antennas back then. It was all a signal that came across the air, much like you get like if you have a portable radio or something like that. It just comes across, I think it's analog. And they're going away from that today. Now you even have to have a converter before you can do that. But no cable TV. I didn't have cable TV, I don't think, here even in Columbus until probably the early to mid 1970s. It was before cable, and right after I was finishing up college.
What were cars like?
Cars, well, for the most part there were only 3 kinds of cars. There were Chevys, Chevrolets, and General Motors cars, there were Fords, and there were Chrysler products, Plymouths, and there were no Hondas, no Nissans, no Toyotas. A pickup truck was a work vehicle only. Nobody drove pickup trucks as their family vehicle. The minivan wasn't around before. That didn't come out again until probably the early 80s is when they had the minivan. So vehicles were a lot different back then. Then you had the maintenance on them was a lot more frequent than they are now. Change oil in them a lot, and tires would wear out real quick. So cars today are a whole lot more dependable and run a lot smoother and a lot nicer. They're actually today they're a lot smaller than they were back then. You'd have a four-door car back then, and literally you could put about 6 people in the back seat. It was so big. So, but that's probably the biggest change.
How many cars did you have?
Yeah, that's another change. I would say probably 85% of the families that I knew only had one car, or some of them didn't have a car. Very few people had 2 cars or 2 vehicles. Everybody just mostly had one. Kids never had cars until they left home.
Did you have a job when you were a kid?
I had a lot of little jobs when I was a kid. I shoveled snow and delivered groceries for our local grocer. Sometimes I went out and worked in my uncle's farm. He had horses, and taking care of the horses, baling hay, things like that. And of course, we did a lot of the work around the house. I think that's probably one place where you guys got it easy. Not many people your age or in your class are mowing your parents' yards these days. We always did our kids, and so we got worked a little harder than you did, I think. But we earned our little spending money here and there. We had a paper route that kept me busy, my brother and I, and got around town on our bicycle, doing most of this. So yeah, we always had jobs. We were always working, but we had plenty of time. We didn't have all the distractions that you guys have today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anytime, Kate. Good.
Tell me about some of the conveniences you had back then.
Well, the conveniences back then compared to today are few and far between. I guess when I look at things, I look at like doing the laundry back then. If you had a washing machine, most often you hung it out on a wash line or something to let it dry out. Not everybody had a washer and dryer. A lot of people went to the laundromat, and a lot of times clothes were washed by hand. So that's one thing that's different between then and now. Most everybody has a washer and dryer today, and that makes it real easy. Of course, I don't think we had as many clothes back then as you have today. I had like 1 or 2 pairs of pants that I wore most of the time. If they were dirty, I wore dirty pants a lot. But for the most part, we got by, but it was a lot more manual. I think, I'm not sure how old I was, but I was probably well into my 20s before I saw the first washing or clothes or dishwasher in a house. Now just about every house has a dishwasher of some sort. Back then, all the kids were in charge of doing the dishes and washing and drying the dishes, and that was part of your chores that you had to do. And today, how often do you do the dishes? None. Yeah, not very often. Yeah, because you got the dishwasher that makes it a lot easier. I think the other thing I remember is taking out the trash. I mean, we still take the trash out today, and garbage men come by and pick it up, but a lot of our trash now goes down the garbage disposal, and there were not garbage disposals back then. We always had to wrap it up in the newspaper and take it out to a garbage can, and we didn't have plastic garbage bags like you have, Glad bags like you have today. It was all done in newspaper. It's probably a little more environmentally friendly back then than it is now, but so we didn't have those types of conveniences. Subtle things I think we take for granted today that weren't around back then. makes a big, big difference today.
Thank you for letting me.
Thank you, Kate. No problem.